Rain hammered the pavement like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop a reminder of Caleb Monroe's spectacularly bad night. He stood on his porch in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, soaked to the bone, fumbling with keys that didn't work because Genius Movie'd grabbed the wrong set in his rush out the door. At 2 a.m., with thunder growling and his phone dead, the universe seemed to be laughing at him. Caleb, a 26-year-old barista with dreams of opening his own cafe, wasn't used to losing control. His life was a careful balance: work at Brood Awakening, save every penny, dodge his parents' endless questions about why he was still single. But tonight, after a fight with his best friend Mia over his refusal to just come out already, he'd stormed out of her apartment, only to find himself locked out of his own house. He pounded the door, half hoping it would magically open, but it stayed stubbornly shut. "Perfect," he muttered, his voice drowned by the storm. He was alone, drenched, and let's be honest, terrified of what coming out might mean in a town where everyone knew your business. Across the street, a light flickered on. Ethan Harper, the 30-year-old artist who'd moved into the old Miller house 6 months ago, stood in his doorway, squinting through the rain. Caleb barely knew him just enough to wave hello or exchange small talk about the weather. Ethan was tall, with a painter's hands and a quiet warmth that made Caleb's stomach do weird flips he tried to ignore. "You okay out there?" Ethan called, his voice cutting through the storm like a lifeline. Caleb hesitated, embarrassment burning his cheeks. "Locked out," he shouted back, gesturing uselessly at the door. "Wrong keys. Phone's dead. I'm kind of screwed." Ethan jogged across the street, his hoodie already darkening with rain. Up close, his hazel eyes held a mix of concern and something softer, something that made Caleb's breath catch. "Come on," Ethan said, nodding toward his house. "You can wait out the storm with me." Inside Ethan's living room, the air smelled of paint and cedar. Canvases leaned against every wall, bursting with color abstract swirls. Bold landscapes, a half-finished portrait of a man with Caleb's jawline that made his heart skip. Ethan handed him a towel and a mug of chamomile tea, their fingers brushing for a split second. That touch warm, fleeting sent a jolt through Caleb, like a door creaking open in a room he'd kept locked. "You're shivering," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "Stay as long as you need." He didn't ask why Caleb was out so late or why his eyes were red from more than just the rain. Instead, he sat on the couch, close enough for Caleb to feel the heat of his presence, but far enough to keep things safe. Safe. That word felt like a cage. Caleb sipped the tea, stealing glances at Ethan. The guy was a mystery-friendly but private, always sketching in his notebook, never talking about his past. Rumors swirled in Willow Creek. Ethan had left a big city art scene. Maybe a broken heart. Maybe something else. Caleb didn't care about the gossip. What he cared about was the way Ethan's gaze lingered, like he saw something in Caleb no one else did. "Thanks for this," Caleb said, breaking the silence. "I didn't expect. I barely know you." Ethan smiled, a crooked thing that lit up the room. "We're neighbors. That's enough for now." They talked for hours, the storm raging outside. Caleb found himself opening up about his cafe dreams, his fear of letting people down, the weight of hiding who he was. Ethan listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving Caleb's. When Caleb mentioned the fight with Mia, his voice cracked. "She thinks I'm a coward for not coming out. Maybe she's right." Ethan leaned forward, his hand resting on Caleb's knee. "You're not a coward," he said firmly. "You're figuring it out. That takes guts." The touch lingered, warm and grounding. Caleb's heart raced, torn between pulling away and leaning closer. He'd spent years building walls, convincing himself he could live without this, without the risk of being seen. But Ethan's hand, steady and sure, felt like permission to want something more. As dawn crept through the windows, the storm quieted. Caleb stood to leave, his clothes still damp but his chest lighter. "I should call a locksmith," he said, though part of him didn't want to go. Ethan walked him to the door, his hand brushing Caleb's arm again. "Anytime you're locked out," he said, "or just need a place to crash, my door's open." Caleb nodded, stepping into the gray morning. The air felt different, charged with possibility. He didn't know it yet, but that night Ethan's touch, his words had cracked something open inside him. Something that wouldn't stay locked much longer. The next week, Caleb couldn't shake Ethan from his mind. Every time he steamed milk or wiped down tables at Brood Awakening, he saw those hazel eyes, felt the ghost of Ethan's hand on his knee. It was distracting, dangerous even, because Willow Creek wasn't the kind of place where two guys could just be. The town was small, its heart big but its eyes sharp, always watching. Caleb's days blurred into routine: open the cafe, smile through customers' small talk, dodge Mia's texts. She'd apologized for calling him a coward, but the sting lingered. He wanted to tell her about Ethan, about the night that felt like a turning point, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he threw himself into work, sketching cafe floor plans in his notebook during breaks. A cozy space with mismatched chairs, local art on the walls, maybe even Ethan's paintings. One evening, as Caleb locked up the cafe, Ethan appeared across the street, leaning against a lamppost with his sketchbook. "Fancy meeting you here," Ethan called, his grin easy but edged with something nervous. Caleb's pulse quickened. "Stalking me now?" he teased, crossing the street. "Caught me." Ethan flipped his sketchbook shut, but not before Caleb glimpsed a drawing of the cafe's storefront, vibrant and alive. "Thought I'd drop by. You free?" They ended up at a diner on the edge of town, neon lights buzzing overhead. Over greasy fries and milkshakes, Ethan talked about his art, how he'd left Philadelphia after a gallery deal went sour, how painting was the only thing keeping him sane. Caleb listened, captivated by the way Ethan's hands moved when he spoke, like he was sculpting the air. "You ever show your work around here?" Caleb asked. Ethan shrugged, his expression tightening. "Willow Creek's not exactly an art hub. Plus, some of my pieces, they're personal. Not sure this town's ready for them." Caleb wanted to ask more, but the waitress lingered nearby, her eyes flicking between them. He shifted in his seat, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting. "What kind of personal?" he pressed, keeping his voice low. Ethan met his gaze, unflinching. "The kind that tells my story. Growing up gay in a place like this, figuring out who I am. Love, loss, all of it." The word gay landed like a stone in Caleb's chest. Ethan said it so easily, like it was just a fact, not a secret to bury. Caleb envied that freedom, even as it terrified him. "How do you do that?" he asked, barely a whisper. "Be so open." Ethan's hand slid across the table, stopping just short of Caleb's. "I wasn't always. Took years, a few bruises, a lot of broken pieces. But hiding, that's worse." Caleb stared at Ethan's hand, inches from his own. He wanted to reach out, to close the gap, but the diner felt like a stage, every glance from other patrons a spotlight. He pulled back, hating himself for it. Back at home, Caleb couldn't sleep. Ethan's words echoed, Hiding's worse. He thought of his parents, devout and traditional, who'd never understand. He thought of Mia, pushing him to be brave. And he thought of Ethan, whose touch had felt like a promise. By midnight, he was at his desk, sketching not just his cafe, but a life where he didn't have to a life, where he could sit across from Ethan and not care who saw. The next day, Caleb found a note slipped under his door. Art show at the community center tomorrow. Come. His stomach flipped. An art show meant people, judgment, exposure. But it also meant Ethan, and that was enough to make him say yes. The community center buzzed with Willow Creek's usual crowd: retirees, church ladies, curious teens, but tonight, it felt like a battlefield. Caleb stood at the edge of the room, clutching a plastic cup of punch, his eyes locked on Ethan's paintings. They were raw, vivid, a boy running through a field, a couple embracing under a bruised sky, a self-portrait with eyes full of defiance and pain. Each one screamed Ethan's truth, unapologetic and bold. Caleb's heart pounded. He'd come to support Ethan, but now he felt exposed, like the paintings were peeling back his own layers. He spotted Ethan across the room, talking to a local reporter, his smile tight but genuine. When their eyes met, Ethan's face softened, and he made his way over. "Glad you came," Ethan said, standing close enough that their shoulders brushed. "What do you think?" "They're intense," Caleb said, his voice catching. "Beautiful. You're not afraid to show everything." Ethan's gaze held his, searching. "Not everything. Not yet." Before Caleb could respond, a voice cut through the hum of the crowd. "Nice work, Harper, but this stuff's a bit much for Willow Creek, don't you think?" It was Tom Grayson, a local contractor with a loud laugh and louder opinions. A few heads turned, and Caleb's stomach sank. Ethan didn't flinch. "Art's supposed to push boundaries, Tom. If it makes you uncomfortable, maybe that's the point." Tom snorted, his eyes flicking to Caleb. "Careful, kid. Hang out with this guy. People might talk." The words hit like a punch. Caleb froze, his face burning as whispers rippled through the crowd. He wanted to disappear, to run, but Ethan's hand found his wrist, a quiet anchor. "Let them talk," Ethan murmured, "just for him. They don't get to decide who we are." Caleb nodded, but the room felt too small, too loud. He slipped outside, the cool night air a relief. Ethan followed, his presence steady but not pushy. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the wall beside Caleb. "I don't know how you do it," Caleb said, his voice raw. "I want to be like you, open, fearless. But I'm scared. Of my parents. This town. What it'll cost." Ethan stepped closer, his hand grazing Caleb's cheek. "You don't have to do it alone," he said. "I've got your back." The touch was electric, pulling Caleb into a moment where the world didn't exist. He leaned in, their lips inches apart, but headlights swept across the parking lot, and Caleb pulled back, heart racing. "I can't," he whispered, more to himself than Ethan. Ethan's eyes held no judgment, only understanding. "When you're ready," he said, "I'll be here." That night, Caleb lay awake, replaying Ethan's touch, his words. He was tired of running, tired of hiding. For the first time, he let himself imagine a future where he didn't have to. Caleb's world felt like it was splitting open. Days after the art show, Willow Creek was abuzz with gossip. Tom Grayson's comment had spread, twisted into rumors that painted Caleb and Ethan as more than neighbors. At Brood Awakening, customers whispered behind their coffee cups, and Caleb's manager, Linda, gave him a look that said she'd heard it all. He wanted to talk to Ethan, but fear kept him away. Instead, he threw himself into his cafe plans, meeting with a local bank for a loan. The banker, a stern woman named Ms. Carter, raised an eyebrow when Caleb mentioned featuring local art. "You mean like that Harper Fellow's work?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Be careful, Caleb. This town's got eyes." That night, Caleb found himself at Ethan's door, heart pounding. Ethan answered in paint-splattered jeans, his smile fading when he saw Caleb's expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, pulling Caleb inside. "People are talking," Caleb said, pacing. "About us." "About me. I haven't even. I'm not out. Ethan. And now they're deciding for me." Ethan's face hardened. "They don't get to do that. You decide who you are, Caleb. Not them." "But it's not that simple." Caleb's voice broke. "My parents feel disown me. My job, my plans, it could all fall apart." Ethan stepped closer, his hands cupping Caleb's face. "You're enough. Just as you are. And if this town can't see that, screw them." Caleb's breath hitched. Ethan's touch was a lifeline, pulling him from the chaos. This time, he didn't pull away. Their lips met, tentative at first, then fierce, like a dam breaking. It was Caleb's first real kiss, raw and real, and it felt like coming home. They spent the night talking, kissing, laughing, tangled in each other on Ethan's couch. Caleb told Ethan about his childhood, his dreams, his fears. Ethan shared his own story coming out at 19, losing friends, finding himself through art. "It's not easy," Ethan said, his fingers laced with Caleb's. "But it's worth it." By morning, Caleb knew he couldn't go back to hiding. He called Mia, his hands shaking. "I'm gay," he said, the words heavy but freeing. "And I'm falling for someone." Mia's voice was all warmth. "About damn time. Caleb. Who's the lucky guy?" He told her everything, and for the first time, he felt whole. But as he left Ethan's house, a text from his mom stopped him cold. "We need to talk. Come home tonight." Caleb's childhood home smelled of his mom's lavender candles. But tonight, it felt like a courtroom. His parents sat across from him, their faces tight with worry. "We've heard things," his dad said, his voice low. "About you and that artist. Is it true?" Caleb's throat closed. He'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. But now, with their eyes on him, the words felt like glass. Ethan's voice echoed in his mind. "You're enough." He took a breath. "Yeah. It's true. I'm gay." The silence was deafening. His mom's eyes filled with tears. His dad's jaw clenched. "This isn't you," his dad said. "It's that Harper kid. He's confusing you." "No," Caleb said, his voice steady now. "This is me. And Ethan, he's helping me be honest." The argument stretched late, voices rising, then falling. His parents didn't understand not yet, but Caleb didn't back down. He left with a promise to keep talking, his heart heavy but unburdened. Back in Willow Creek, life wasn't easy. Some customers stopped coming to Brood Awakening, and Ms. Carter denied his loan, citing community concerns. But Caleb didn't break. He and Ethan grew closer, their love a quiet rebellion against the town's whispers. Mia rallied behind them, organizing an art show for Ethan at the cafe, where his paintings sold out. Months later, Caleb stood in his own cave funded by a crowdfunding campaign Mia had launched. Ethan's art hung on the walls, a testament to their journey. As Caleb served the first customer, Ethan slipped an arm around his waist, kissing his cheek in front of everyone. The world didn't end. Some stared, some smiled, but Caleb felt free. That night, locked out no more, Caleb realized Ethan's touch hadn't just changed him, it had shown him who he'd always been. In a town that tried to define him, he'd found the courage to define himself. And love, in all its messy beauty, had led the way.